Good morning, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us on Saturdays or for Cricut crafting for the holidays. Gosh, I can't believe in 2 weeks it's already Thanksgiving. This month's flown by. My Christmas tree has already been decorated since September. So, Shawn, what do you have for us today? Did anybody contact you directly to ask you about something that we should be doing today?
Yes, I did have somebody reach out to me. And last week we had learned how to put a vinyl decal onto an ornament. And I had somebody ask me, well, how would you do that same kind of idea, but that has more than one color in the design? Because I feel like and it's a really great question because there's a lot of crafters out there that feel pretty confident when doing one color designs. But today we're going to talk about two color designs. So I am going to be sharing my screen so you can take a look at Design Space. And if I can find my little share screen button, that would be, there we go. Technology. So if your little chat window with all of our little pictures is way over on the right side and covering your layers, your view of the layers panel that I'm showing in Design Space, just move that around so that you can see everything. So the easiest way to find images to use in your Cricut are to use the images straight out of Cricut Design Space. These have already been formatted and set up with each color being a different layer. So I'm going to click on images. If you follow me, you are going to find out very quickly, I am the queen of finding a deal or a freebie. So where I'm going to go is right here where it says free. These are all images and designs that are completely free for you to use in Cricut Design Space. Now, you will notice there's some that will have an A on them. If it has an A on it, that means that image is a part of the Cricut Access membership. So if you pay the $10 a month to Cricut, you have access to all of the elements that are within this design. The other ones are free for anybody. I personally do not pay for Cricut Access. I find enough of my designs for free every day on lots of other sites. So I don't feel the need to pay Cricut for my designs, but you know, that's up to you what you want to do. I strongly encourage you that if you are still just learning how to use the software, do not subscribe to Access right away. Here's the reason. You can design and save off all kinds of project files and learn the software and get everything designed and save those projects. Cricut will not want to charge you until you hit make it. So if you feel like you need a couple weeks just to play with the software and learn it, do that without Cricut Access turned on. And then if you want to turn it on later so that you have access to those designs for free, then do that. Does that make sense? Like, you know, it's like, why pay for Netflix if you know you're going to be on vacation? Yeah, because you're not going to be using it. So I am going to scroll down here. I found this wreath, but I thought I saw another one. This one. So this wreath, you can see, has 3 colors in it: the red, the green, and the yellow. And it says right here, it's a free image. I'm just going to click on that image. And now I say add to canvas. And there it is. I am going to turn off all this stuff about me. And let's just look at this design for a minute. So when I click on it and move it around, you can see all of the pieces are moving together. If I try to resize it, it's all resizing together. And that is because these images, or these layers, I'm sorry, are currently grouped together. Grouping different colored layers together allows you to work with them and keep them all kind of aligned to each other. So let's say we didn't want those little yellow ornament pieces in here. We just wanted the red and green. I can look over here at the layers panel. This is the Christmas wreath grouping right here. When I click on that grouping, it's highlighting the 3 different colored layers. You can see this is the green, this is the red, and this is the yellow. If I want to eliminate or turn off that yellow one, I can just click that eyeball. You can see it turned it off. Yes, it left big holes in the green because of the way the design was set up, but it turned it off. I want to show you another little thing before we get too deep. I'm going to take this whole thing and duplicate it. Because it was grouped together, it duplicated all 3 layers at the same time versus having to make a copy of the red, a copy of the green, and a copy of the yellow. So if I wanted to totally eliminate that yellow, I could turn this off and then go to the green layer and use contour to close out those circles. Okay, it worked for the majority of this one. The reason it didn't work for this portion right here, zoom in there. Oh, I had ungrouped those, so that shows you why you want to group. Because with them ungrouped, when I clicked on that, it pulled just the green away, so that was not good. Anyway, can you see right here, there's a little tiny opening gap in the green, right here also. So contour closes off a shape or removes a section of a cut. So the reason I could close out this circle is because the circle itself is not closed. There's an opening in that gap. So if I did want to close that out fully, what I could do is go to the shapes. And this is all about looking at your design, and when like contour wasn't working like I expected to just really look at it and figure out why. Okay, so first I have to ungroup this. So you can turn off the red and just work with the green. Now I'm going to duplicate this. Put that right there. So basically I just am covering up those 2 circle openings with my own circles. Now I can grab everything and say weld, and that's going to join all those pieces together. It left a little sliver there. Let's see if I can. You see this little curved half circle? It's like an itty bitty edge of this circle did fully fill in. So that's what I'm trying to repair now. This is just kind of showing you how you can look at an image and say, it's not really what I want, and make it what you want. Okay, so now that I have that, I would turn the red back on. And now, what I've just done between using contour and weld is create a version of this same wreath that doesn't have little ornaments in it. Anybody have any questions on that process? Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is cut this. Do we want to cut the one with the ornaments or the one without? Any votes? I think I might do the one with the ornaments. So since I'm not going to use this one, I can just hide it over here. Oh, actually, better yet, what I should have done was group this back together. Group that back together, then I can hide it. Because the Cricut is only going to cut what it can see visible on the screen. And I am going to enlarge this a little bit just so it's easier for my weeding purposes. Now when I click make it, it's going to go and send everything to the different Cricut mats. Because it was an image that was already set up in Cricut Design Space with colored layers, it automatically sorted everything to put each color on a different layer. I didn't have to do anything. I just didn't make it. That's why using images from Cricut Design Space that are already set up correctly is probably the easiest way to go. The next easiest way is to use an SVG file because those are already set up with layers. So this is telling you the first thing I'm going to cut is the yellow, which I'm actually going to cut out of gold. Then we're going to cut the green, and then we're going to cut the red. So I'm going to hit continue. And it's connecting to my Bluetooth. It is already set for vinyl. I'm going to transfer it into the other room so we can start cutting.
Okay. Usually when I'm in here, I can at least see a kind of mirrored image of myself, and it's just kind of weird. So the first color said we're going to cut is the gold. So I'm going to put the gold on my cutting mat. My mat is not super sticky because I use my mats over and over and over again. So one trick I use is putting some painter's tape, or this is washi tape. And that just helps hold things in place so they don't move around while cutting. I am going to load the mat, hit the double arrow to have it fully load. And then we cut. Any questions so far? And like I said, for some reason, I can't see me on the screen. So like, can you see the machine and like, let me know. Usually I can check that like.
Yeah, we can see the machine, Shawn.
Okay, good. Because usually I can see what you're seeing so that I can like adjust things. So like throwing me off a little bit. Okay, so then the next color we want to cut is the green. So I'm just going to remove that washi tape, take this whole piece with the gold vinyl off. I'm actually going to rotate my mat so that I'm not always using the same corner. And now I'm putting the green vinyl. This is all adhesive vinyl. And I'm using StarCraft, which is, I would say, my favorite, my go-to for adhesive vinyl. Like we talked about last week, how I know that this is adhesive vinyl is one, it's got the paper backing with the grid on the back of it. And if it didn't have that, I could peel back this corner and say, the vinyl's what's sticky. So that means it's adhesive vinyl as opposed to a heat transfer vinyl. All right, so now we will load the green. And we know that's the green that we're supposed to load next because when I'm looking at the Cricut Design Space screen, you could see the order of it went yellow, green, and then red. So it's telling you which color you should be loading. Now, while that's cutting, I am going to grab the gold. And I'm just going to cut a big square around the gold piece, the outer edges of it. And now I'm going to weed the gold, because remember it was just some dots. Okay, so now I have my gold all weeded and ready for the project. It's multitasking. And some people do like to cut everything, and then they go sit and watch TV and weed, but you know, for saving on time, I'm doing it this way. All right, so now we unload the green and we can see that's cut. So last but not least will be the red. Any questions yet?
No, there aren't any questions here, Shawn. Or
Awesome.
Raised hands.
I haven't lost anybody yet. Between the red. My red is on crooked, so I'm going to adjust because otherwise I have a weird section cut out of it. Okay. If I didn't use this painter's tape, washi tape on it, there are sometimes that the vinyl will shift and move around on the mat when it's not a super sticky mat. But like I said when we started this, I'm a budget saving thrifty girl. So using a little bit of this tape gets my mat to last longer. So then I don't have to go buy new ones. Okay, load the red. Cut the red. And the reason I come back and just kind of trim out the pieces before I weed is because when I used to just start weeding, once you got to the end of the shape you cut, it kind of got hard to stop the weeding. So then you might pull up more vinyl than you wanted to, and you're like, well, now I just wasted all that vinyl because I can't cut with it again. Okay, so now I have this design. I'm going to pull out all of the circle ornament spots that were inside. And I'm just using my weeding tool, which, like we talked about last week, looks like the dentist tool that they clean your teeth with.
Shawn, there's a question in the app, in the chat. Says how do you determine how much amount of pressure you put on there?
Good question. And we're talking about cutting pressure?
I believe so, yeah.
So with the Cricut machines, there is, on mine, it has a dial, and it's got a list of your most common materials. If you have one of the newer machines and there's no dial on it, when we got to that first matte preview screen where I was saying, you know, I'm connecting to the Bluetooth and now you can see it shows I'm using my vinyl for my cut setting. If your machine does not have a dial, what you would do is pick in that section what material you are cutting from. And mine has a dial, so I just put it on vinyl. I have vinyl, iron-on cardstock, poster board, and then there is one called custom, which allows me to pick and choose my settings. But if I'm going with standard presets, basically, you think of it like adding favorites, to a list. It's like Cricut picked out some of your basic, most common go-to favorites and put them in there. And they said, yep, these are our recommended cut settings for pressure and speed and all that kind of stuff. They figured that out for you. But one thing to remember, Cricut does those settings for their products. So when they say final, they're saying this is the best cut setting that we have determined for Cricut brand vinyl. And that is how, when people say, oh, I used some other brand vinyl and it didn't cut right. Well, their preset is for Cricut brand vinyl. So what I have learned to do is when I do a project with a different brand, like I'm using StarCraft, before I would even start this project first time, I would just cut some hearts, some stars, something simple on both the Cricut vinyl or the vinyl plus, and kind of play with between those two and see which is the best setting. If you don't think either one is the best setting, you could go create a custom setting of your own and name it StarCraft vinyl. I actually have a video on my YouTube channel about how to make your own custom settings. Does that answer the question? Back in the day, before Cricut had the presets, they used to have a little dial on the side that was a 1 through 5, I think, for pressure and speed. And for every material you're cutting, you had to remember or make a little cheat sheet that, like, this one is pressure this, speed that. It was annoying. Okay, so now I have the red. But whenever you're using a new product that you haven't used before, I would definitely do some test cutting and determine your best settings. And then write it down or go into your favorites and set those, or not your favorites, your custom settings, and set those up. And then whenever you're using that product again, you will already have that. Another thing, so sometimes when my blade is getting dull, if I normally would use a vinyl setting, if my blade is kind of dull and I don't have time to run to the store and buy a new blade, I will just switch it from vinyl to vinyl plus, which basically adds a little bit more force to it. And if it's not a really detailed, intricate design, it's usually enough to make it work. Okay, I have one little piece that's being crabby at me, probably because I'm talking and crafting at the same time. Any other questions while I'm weeding this? I wish I could do an overhead view so you could see the weeding process better, but I am not that fancy. And then
No, Shawn, I don't have any questions right now.
Okay. I would also have to have a tech support person with me to like switch me to overhead view. You can see I'm weeding the red out. So the next step is going to be to grab our transfer tape. And last time we used our transfer tape to transfer the full design over at once. For this, because our design has multiple colors in it, we can either do one of two things. We can either lay down one color of the design on our finished project and then just layer the next one over the top, or we can build all those layers together on the transfer sheet and transfer them all at once. Okay.
Shawn, there's a question. It says, do you use powder or any substance that will help with the weeding, like white on white?
Yeah, I have heard people do that. Some people say it's a godsend for like when you're weeding black, because then the baby powder or whatever you use is white and sits into the groove. I've actually found really good lighting works better for me. But you know what? Our eyes are all different. So if you find a trick that works good for you, I encourage you to use it. For me, it's really good overhead lighting. My craft room is just a spare bedroom, and it's just got your basic overhead light with a fan thing. It is not good at all. So then I have a ring light, which is actually what I use for videotaping, that I put that sucker down and as bright as it can go, and that helps me to weed. Another thing I found is my daughter, who's in her 20s, loves weeding intricate designs. So I think it was last year at Christmas, I was doing a project and it had itty bitty pieces, and she got so excited. So I just like let her weed it. Yeah, I know that's not the answer for everything, but it worked. Okay. But yeah, I've never had to use the like baby powder trick. I've always worried that that would mess up the stickiness of the adhesive too. So that's the other reason I go to good lighting. Ooh, good lighting and a magnifying glass. I find this is even better because then you can hold that over and really see things. And for itty bitty little tiny pieces, the pin pen is great because you can literally just poke a tiny piece and peel it back. Those are my tips. Okay, so now we have 3 layers. So what I'm going to do is put the transfer tape onto the gold, peel that off, and transfer it into the green design. Then we'll transfer both the gold and the green together into the red design. So just like we did last week, transfer tape goes down over the design. We take our little burnishing tool. And honestly, I used to kind of think, really, that tool, it's going to make that big of a difference, before I started doing a lot of vinyl projects. And I got one, I was like, oh, this is a game changer. So now I don't laugh at this as much as I used to. Okay, so you saw I burnished it on both sides. Now I'm going to peel off the paper backing from the vinyl. Do not try to peel the transfer tape back and go, oh, it didn't stick. I see people do that all the time. But no, you get peel the paper backing off. It also works better when you have things laying down on a flat surface. And then I like to peel a corner back and kind of roll that backing. That is because then the vinyl is staying stuck to the transfer tape while you're guiding, encouraging, gently telling the backing, come away. And if I was rolling and peeling back like this, and any part of that vinyl started to come up, I would be able to see it and quickly stop. Where if you're just doing a quick rip, you know, pull it like a Band-Aid, you're not going to see that. I always have some people say, but Shawn, on the video, they do it so quick. Here's my little spoiler alert from a person who does those videos. We do it at this speed, and then we go into a video editing software and say, run that at 3 times or 5 times the speed. So if you would have sped up what I just did to 3 times, it would have looked like I just went zoop. So not everything is what, don't believe everything you see. Okay, now I'm going to use a piece of parchment paper. I am going to put the design with the gold spots down over the parchment paper. Okay, so I've transfer tape with the gold dots with the piece of parchment tape, the paper. The reason I have the parchment paper here is now on this back side, all of this area where the parchment paper is sitting is not sticky. So I can put it over the top of the green one and shift it around without going, oh crap, it caught and stuck before I was ready. I'm hoping you can see where the gold dots are right up here on the top. I have 2 of them kind of half exposed. That's because when I do set things in place, I need part of the design to kind of stick. So I am short, so I have to get up on my tiptoes. So I'm just laying this down over the top of the green. And because that parchment paper isn't sticky, I can keep shifting things around until I'm like, yep, that's where I want those little dots to line up. Once I have it lined up, then I press it down. I'm pressing above the parchment paper line because now that's going to stick. And when I lift this up for you, you can see this part of the design is now got transfer tape over it. Okay. I can now lift up this part and pull that parchment paper out so that I can smooth down the whole thing. Now I can't pick it up. So now you can see I've layered one color over the other. So the reason I was able to layer that so easily is because the parchment paper made it more mobile. Before using parchment paper, I was like, I can just eyeball this. I go stick it down and like one circle would be in the right spot and then one would be way off, but the stickiness had already caught, so trying to peel that back up was not good. So now we're going to burnish again for this design and use that same parchment paper layering trick to put this whole thing over the red. So now this time when I pull the paper off, I'm pulling it off, and now both the green and the gold will be stuck to the transfer tape. I feel like I should have holiday music in the background while I'm doing this. Oh, that peeled pretty darn nice. Okay, so now here's the design. Now the back of this, everything is sticky. So parchment paper. Okay. Now lay this down and get up above it so we can line things up. And I hope you can see, like I am shifting and moving my hands because it's like, okay, I get one side right, and then I'm kind of shifting the other side to line things up. All right, I'm happy with that. So now the part above the parchment paper, basically this green piece from the green and gold layer is what's holding everything in place onto the red layer. So now when I lift this up and pull out that parchment paper and lay it back down, well, that worked pretty good, even with me doing it upright instead of down flat. I'm actually kind of impressed with myself. So now the whole thing is layered. So now we burnish again. We could use this as an arm workout. And then I got to figure out what I'm going to put this on. Okay, so now burnished both sides. Now we're peeling off again. That one little piece of the red didn't come up, so I just rolled it back and hit it with my thumb with some more pressure. There we go. Your entire design is now on transfer paper. You can stick this onto anything you want. If you were making decals to sell, like this is how you could sell them, is like design them like this and then either put the parchment paper on it like this to mail it to somebody and say, okay, now you just have to put it. Any questions while I find something to put this on?
Before placing it down on there, on the sticky stuff, if you clean it with alcohol.
No. Well, I would clean the surface where I'm applying it, but not these different layers.
Okay.
So yes, if this was going to be the permanent forever home for this, I would definitely would have cleaned this white surface, which I'm hoping all of you can see, with rubbing alcohol, let it dry, because you want to make sure whatever you're applying your design to is fully clear of any dust and dirt and anything that could interfere with your project sticking to it. So now all I would do is take my fully layered design and set it wherever I want it to be on here and smooth it down.
Yeah, if you're having trouble seeing it, click on Shawn's I guess a tile, or just pop her out. It should actually pop you out when she's speaking. And then you'll be able to see the whole picture instead of a portion of it.
So I'm just smoothing it down. You can use the burnishing tool also. If you were to clean this on a curved surface like a cup, what I would do is try to get the center point where you want it and smooth down the center point and then smooth out and away. So all this smoothing and rubbing is making sure there's no bubbles. So then the next step is going to be to peel this transfer tape off, which leaves the design on that white lid. I'm trying to get my camera angle a little bit better, because I do have to kind of set this down in order to peel this off. So now I'm kind of rolling back the transfer tape. You can see that red one's starting to pick up. Part of that's because I'm doing it at this weird angle. So gravity is fighting against me. But because of my little roll it back technique, I was able to see it was coming up and just rub it back down. Well, that little piece started to come up. I'm going to put it back down now. Just, yeah. There's just something about the angle that when you're rolling things. So now all three layers are transferred onto this piece. The other way to do it would be to put each piece down one at a time on, you know, your final project and layer them that way. I like to layer them on the transfer tape and just move everything all at once. So I'm just checking time. Oh, good, we have time. So any questions about working with images with more than one color? And layering those colors with the transfer tape so that you can move them all at one time onto your finished project. I'm going to go back to the Design Space screen because I was going to show you another thing. If there's no questions on this. That turned out pretty good.
Shawn, someone does have a question. Do the same layering rules apply to heat transfer vinyl?
Good question. So with heat transfer vinyl, pretend we were putting this design on a white t-shirt. I probably would have started with the red first. Here's the reason why. The red is going to help you figure out and determine the top and the bottom of where your design is placed. I would have pressed that for about 8 seconds. And I know like most vinyl is going to say, oh, you got to press it for 20 to 30 some seconds. Because we're doing a multi-layered press, do the first layer for about 8 seconds. Take it out of the heat press, remove it from the heat. Once you move your carrier sheet, which is that clear sheet over the top of the heat press vinyl, I literally stand here and wave the shirt or product around to let it cool down. You should be able to touch that vinyl and not feel heat before you start to line up the next color, which in that case, I would do the green. Then you press that for about 8 seconds. Repeat. Peel off the carrier sheet, let her cool down, then do the last gold one. So the reason I would do things in the reverse order, again, is if I press down the gold first, just like how we did, you know, the gold first when we were layering this time, you might press the gold down, and then when you go to place the rest of your wreath, you're like, oh, well, I wanted my bow more centered, and now because of where I placed the gold, I'm kind of locked into that position. So start with the thing that's going to help you center and align your project to where you want it positioned on the shirt fabric piece. Then start to layer in the other colors. After you have layered everything in, then you can press the whole thing for a full amount press. So the reason for doing the short presses, like the 8-second ones between, and for allowing things to cool down before doing the next press is, think about this. If I press the red on, it's been pressed for 8 seconds. It's hot. If I don't let it cool down and I right away go with the green, now I'm applying more heat to something that's already been pressed and isn't fully set. So then I'm also removing a carrier sheet from on top of that. So now it's something that's not fully baked and not fully set, and I'm messing with it. And then I would have to put the gold over the top, so that's more heat. So like by the time you get to the gold, the red's already been pressed for, you know, like almost close to its fully cooked time. So that's why you're doing the press it short, just enough to get it to stick, and letting it cool down. Because otherwise, if you try doing right on top of each other right away, what will happen to your red is it will overheat and melt and get kind of this distorted, warpy texture to it. Does that make sense? Got it. I do have tutorials on my website and YouTube videos about layering and using HTV. And I mean, if you look at any of my HTV iron on vinyl projects and you see more than one color, I'm going to show you how I press, let it cool, press it again. It takes longer, but then they look better. Okay, I'm going to go back into the craft room because in the last few minutes, if there's no questions, I wanted to show you one more thing.
If you have questions, like, let me know. Because again, I always want to do stuff that's helping you. Another thing that I had thought about doing for this project was showing you how you can take an image like this, like the snowman one. I refer to these kind of images as coloring book images because it's just a black and white image in an outline book, much like how a coloring book that you buy for kids looks, right? If I start with a coloring book style image, lots of people ask me, how do I get this black and white coloring book image to a fully colored in layered image? That's all about using duplicate and contour. So what I'm going to do is hit the duplicate button. I just right clicked to get duplicate. Now, if I want this to be, let's make this orange for the carrot nose. Okay, so now the whole thing is orange. If I go into contour, contour allows me to turn on and off different areas of my design. So the first thing I want to do is turn off the outline. When I click this outline piece, watch what happens down here. You're going to see magic happen. See how I flipped everything and filled in those center cuts? So now that carrot nose is filled in. So now I can tell it, well, that's the only thing I want filled in, so I can turn off all these other pieces. If you can't fit the piece, like I'm having a challenge with this guy right here, you can go over on this side and find it and fill it in that way. Close it off. Kind of like working a puzzle. You're going, okay, like this piece, like when I'm scrolling along, look at these two pieces. These look like the carrot noses. So those are the pieces we want left on. And we're going to turn all of the other stuff off. This is one of my favorite things to do in Design Space because it allows me to take these already pre-designed images and make them more my own. There we go, noses. Okay, I'm sorry, that makes me so excited. So I could keep doing this and make white faces and different colors for the bow and the hat and on and on and on and on. So that's how you can adjust. Very similar to how we use contour to turn off these openings in the green wreath part and make that design our own. Just because you find an image in Cricut Design Space in an SVG form anywhere else does not mean that's the only way you can make it. One of my favorite things to do, I actually, because I get an idea in my head of like, oh, I want this with this with this. So then I go and find like 3 different images and marry them together. I am also a seamstress and I made my wedding dress, and kind of how I did my wedding dress was I found a bodice from one pattern I liked and make the sleeves off the other, train off the other, and made them all come together. And then I was like, I have my own basically custom dress. You can do that same thing with the images. It's all about learning what buttons you need to hit to make it happen. And look at that, we have 2 minutes.
Shawn, someone had a question about what about using different types of vinyl that are easy weed or glitter? What do you do first?
Okay, so easy weed, that is a iron-on vinyl. So if you're using a standard glitter iron-on vinyl, your glitter always has to go on the top. I like to describe glitter like sprinkles. You would not make a cupcake and put the sprinkles on the bottom, then the cake, then the frosting. Sprinkles go on top, just like the glitter. Why? Because it's got a texture. If you try to press a flat color on top of that texture, you're going to get all the bumpies in it, and you're going to cover up some of that pretty glitter vinyl. The exception to that rule would be Caesar made a special line called Sparkle, and there's another one, their companion one that I can't remember the name of, that is actually a flat surface vinyl, a flat surface glitter. The glitter is baked into the vinyl versus sitting on top. So here's how you know. If you're holding your vinyl and you run your hand over it, it feels bumpy and kind of like a low-grade sandpaper. That's a vinyl that's got to go on top. If it's a vinyl that's like smooth as silk, but you can still see the sparkle, that means it's baked in. You can layer on top of that. I have actually, if you go to shawnmosch.com and search sparkle, you will see a shirt that I made. It either has 4 or 5 colors in it, but all the colors are sparkle glitter vinyl. So I was able to do that many colors because that sparkle line is smooth. Does that answer the question, or just make you want to go buy more vinyl?
Next week is our final session. It is it's going to be 2 hours, basically, because we were going to extend it to the day after Thanksgiving, that Thanksgiving weekend, but I felt like there probably would be a lot of people out of town or doing things with families and everything that were coming in. So next week is a 2-hour program.
If you have ideas of like, I want to know how to do this, send them to me, because I did actually plan out things, but I'm okay with pivoting, because I would rather pivot and do stuff that you want to see and you want to learn than just talk Cricut to talk. I'm here for you.
I'm going to type my email address in the chat. If you have any questions about something or need to visit with me about something, I'm going to go ahead and put my email address there and you can reach out to me. Carrie, if for some reason you can't find the link, like I said, my email address is in the chat. Go ahead and forward me the email and I'll send you the link for next week's class.
And I can drop my email in there too. So if anybody's got like follow-up questions or like, hey, Shawn, I'd really like to do this next week. Like if I get enough people saying they want to do a specific thing, I'm all for it. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think somebody said maybe we should do cards or how to use the markers.
Okay. We did do that
I think that was in the first class. This ends our portion of Saturdays are for Cricut crafting for the holidays. So if you have any questions, like I said, my email address is in the chat. Go ahead and feel free to drop me an email if you have any questions about anything. And I apologize for our videos that haven't loaded onto our YouTube page, but they will be on there. That way you can go back and review anything that you might not have been able to catch during these classes. And they're all like, you can go back even to check the first set of classes that we did back in April and May. They're on there, they're evergreen, they're going to be on there for a while, so feel free to check those out as well. But if you don't have any questions, we'll log off. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you all stay warm wherever you're at, or enjoy the sun wherever you're at. And because I'm in Shawn's boat, it's kind of gloomy outside, a nice day for chili. and to stay bundled up at home. So stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you next Saturday. Bye-bye.
Bye.